harms to families and communities. So I commend you for that. I want to zero in on the topic of family because I think it's touched upon here, but really merits being highlighted for a few reasons. And I want to just share where I come at this, and it's actually specific to Maryland. Several years ago, we launched a study called Returning Home, Understanding the Challenges of Prisoner Reentry. Maryland was our pilot site. We interviewed and followed over 400 men and women leaving prison, state prison, and returning to Baltimore communities. We asked a whole host of questions about the factors that led up to their incarceration, their histories of substance addiction, their family relationships, what kinds of programs they participated in prison, their extensive substance abuse histories, and then followed them over the course of a year after release and interviewed them 2 to 3 times after their release, and also interviewed family members of prisoners. We learned a lot of things that won't be of surprise to folks in this room who, deal with this population day in and day out and really know it better than I would as a researcher. But one finding that I thought was really important to highlight is the role that family plays in successful reentry. And this, when we first found this, it was actually a surprise to a lot of the service providers that we shared our research with, because I think perhaps they were dealing with the small percentage of folks that really have no ties, no support systems whatsoever. But what we found is nearly everyone that we interviewed could identify at least one person in their lives that they considered to be a supportive family member. And when we talked to them before they were released, we asked them about their expectations for support from family members, and their expectations were extremely high. Both expectations for financial support, for housing, as well as for moral support, emotional support. And at that point in time, we thought, once we talk to them after release, they're going to be really disappointed. They're going to have, their expectations won't be met. Well, actually, we found the opposite. We found that their expectations were not only met, but in many cases they were exceeded. These family members were there for them. They were there for them even more than they had expected. And perhaps not surprisingly, we found that the higher the family support, the better the reentry outcomes. The less likely they would end up relapsing, the more likely they'd find a job. In particular, men who had stronger ties to their minor children were more likely to find and keep a job. So what does this mean in terms of policy? Well, I think that we need to shore up that family support even more. We need to bring families into the prison prior to release, have them engage in what's called family conferencing so that their expectations are in line with the person who's going to be returning home in terms of how long they'll be living there, how long it will take before they can kind of get up the ability to go look for a job. You can't do that on day one. Day one, you just get used to being in free society, and it takes some time to reintegrate. Importantly, enhancing the ability of families and children to visit their incarcerated loved ones. I know that that's referenced in this document. Family-friendly visitation, communicating with family members. We learned that the biggest barriers to visitation are distance and cost. But there's other more nuanced barriers when you are halfway to the prison, then you find out it's in lockdown.